The hospital doors creaked open just after midnight, and in the dim glow of the emergency lights, the security guard noticed an unusual silhouette. It moved carefully, its shadow stretching and shifting as it approached. At first he thought it might be a stray animal, but as the figure drew closer, he realized it was something far more astonishing. A large, scruffy dog, its fur matted with mud and streaks of blood, stepped through the doorway. Clutched gently in its jaws was a baby, wrapped haphazardly in a tattered blanket. The guard's breath caught in his throat. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. The dog met his gaze with pleading eyes, as if silently begging for help. Blood dripped steadily onto the cold tile floor, and the infant's tiny fingers twitched. The spell broke, and the guard leapt into action, shouting for assistance. Nurses and doctors rushed toward the scene, their hurried footsteps echoing in the stark corridors. The dog, exhausted and trembling, laid the baby down with infinite care and backed away. Its eyes never left the bundle on the floor, even as the medical team descended. It whimpered softly, a sound so low and mournful that it cut straight through the chaos around it. No one knew yet what horrors had brought the dog and child together, but everyone could feel the weight of the moment. Lives were about to change forever. The emergency room erupted into a whirlwind of activity. Nurses wrapped the baby in clean blankets, working quickly to check vital signs. The doctor on call, Dr. Anaya Patel, leaned in, her hands moving deftly as she assessed the infant's fragile state. A deep gash ran along the child's forehead and his skin was cold to the touch. Dr. Patel's eyes narrowed in focus. They needed to stabilize him fast. The dog stood back, eyes darting between the baby and the people surrounding him. Its chest rose and fell heavily, and its legs seemed ready to give out. Despite its exhaustion, it remained poised to spring forward at any sign of harm to the baby. Dr. Patel glanced at the dog and noticed the raw patches of fur, the small cuts across its muzzle. It was hurt too, but there was a fierce protectiveness in its eyes. "Someone get that dog some water and call animal control," she said over her shoulder. But even as she spoke, her tone softened. This was no ordinary stray. This dog had risked its life for a child, and that meant there was a story waiting to be uncovered. "Doctor, he's breathing," one of the nurses interrupted, a hint of relief in her voice. The baby's chest rose and fell slowly but steadily. There were bruises on his small body, ugly purples and blues that spoke of neglect, of violence, or perhaps both. "How old?" Dr. Patel asked. "Not more than 6 months," came the reply. The reality of it struck everyone hard. Who would abandon such a tiny soul? And what was this dog's connection? Dr. Patel had seen her share of tragedies, but this one felt different, raw, urgent, with a mystery that demanded answers. Meanwhile, a young nurse named Rosa approached the dog with a bowl of water. She knelt down slowly, her movements gentle and deliberate. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, "you've done something incredible." The dog's ears twitched, and it eyed the bowl before lapping the water greedily. Every so often it paused, glancing back at the baby. The bond was unmistakable, and the questions only grew. After stabilizing the child, the medical team moved him to the pediatric ward. As they wheeled the baby away, the dog let out a low, mournful howl. It tried to follow but stumbled, its strength nearly spent. Rosa reached out, hesitant at first, then rested her hand on its head. "You're not alone," she murmured. Tears glistened in her eyes. She had grown up in foster care herself, abandoned at a young age, and the sight of this dog, this fierce protector, resonated deeply. Animal control arrived shortly after, but Dr. Patel intervened. "No cages," she said firmly. "This dog stays here, under our care, until we know more." The staff nodded in agreement, sensing the gravity of her words. The dog had earned its place among them, at least for now. The baby, who the nurses named Leo, spent the night under close observation. Monitors beeped rhythmically as he slept, his tiny chest rising and falling in time. Dr. Patel checked on him often, haunted by the image of the bruises and the questions that refused to quiet in her mind. Who was Leo? What had happened to him? And why had a dog of all creatures brought him here, to this very hospital? In the hours that followed, news of the dog and the baby spread. Reporters gathered outside, their cameras hungry for a story. The hospital staff shielded the details, unsure of how much to share. But whispers began to circulate. People spoke of miracles, of loyalty, of a bond forged through pain and danger. As the sun rose, Dr. Patel stood in her office, staring at a photograph of Leo. She had spent a sleepless night researching, digging through missing child reports and local incidents. Nothing fit. Frustration gnawed at her, but she knew they were on the edge of something bigger. Just then, a soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Rosa with the dog at her side. "He won't leave," she said quietly. "I think he's trying to tell us something." The dog stepped forward, eyes locked on Dr. Patel. It barked once, sharp and deliberate, then limped to the door and turned back as if to beckon her to follow. Heart pounding, Dr. Patel grabbed her coat. "Show me," she said, and together they followed the dog out into the morning light. The dog led them through quiet streets, past small shops opening for the day and neighborhoods coming to life. Rosa walked beside Dr. Patel, their steps cautious yet driven by a sense of urgency neither could shake. The dog's limp was pronounced now, but it pressed forward, stopping only to glance back and ensure they followed. Occasionally, its ears twitched at distant noises, car horns, barking dogs, but it never wavered from its path. Eventually, they reached an overgrown lot at the edge of town. The air here felt heavy, tinged with a sense of abandonment. Broken glass and discarded trash littered the ground, and weeds grew wild, reclaiming the space. The dog paused, sniffing the air, before moving toward what appeared to be the crumbling remains of a small house. The roof had caved in on one side and the windows were broken, like empty eyes staring out at nothing. "This place," Rosa whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. It seemed like a forgotten corner of the world, a place no one cared about anymore. Dr. Patel nodded, her gaze fixed on the dog. It had stopped at the doorway, its body tense. As they approached, the dog barked a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the lot. It was more than a bark, it was a call, an urgent plea. Steeling herself, Dr. Patel stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight streaming through cracks in the walls. The air was thick with decay and memories long buried. Rosa hesitated, then followed, her hand resting lightly on the dog's back for comfort. They moved carefully, guided by instinct and the dog's urgent glances. In one corner of the room, hidden beneath a moldy blanket, was a makeshift crib, a wooden box lined with old rags. Dr. Patel's heart sank. The sight was painfully clear. Someone had tried to create a space for a baby here. A closer look revealed more discarded bottles, some with curdled milk, a stuffed toy, torn and weathered. It spoke of desperation, of an attempt to nurture amid squalor. The dog whined softly, nudging the blanket with its nose. Dr. Patel knelt and lifted it carefully, revealing claw marks on the floor. They were deep and frantic, as if something or someone had fought to escape. Tears burned in her eyes. What had happened here? Rosa picked up a piece of paper from the floor. It was yellowed and fragile, the ink smudged, but some of it was legible. A name, Leo, and a list of dates. Next to them were words scrawled in shaky handwriting. "I tried to keep him safe. I failed." Rosa's hands trembled as she passed the note to Dr. Patel. Before they could process what it all meant, the dog barked again, this time louder. It paced near a pile of debris, pawing at the ground. With mounting dread, Dr. Patel and Rosa began to clear the rubble. Beneath broken planks and shattered bricks, they found the remnants of a small door leading to a hidden basement. The air grew colder as they descended, each step echoing ominously. The basement was dark, save for a few rays of light piercing through gaps above. There, in the center, lay signs of struggle: a toppled chair, rope fibers, and stains that told a story of pain. Dr. Patel's mind raced. Was this where Leo's journey began? How had he escaped? And what role did the dog play? Rosa's voice broke the silence. "Look." She pointed to a small, metal tag partially buried in the dirt. It was a dog's ID tag. Dr. Patel picked it up, brushing off the dirt. The name etched into the metal read Max. Understanding clicked into place. The dog, Max, wasn't just a protector. He was part of this tragedy, a witness to everything that had unfolded here. As if sensing their realization, Max walked over and rested his head on Dr. Patel's knee. His eyes were filled with sorrow, but also a flicker of hope. He had done everything he could to bring Leo to safety, and now he was trusting them to finish what he had started. The police were called, and an investigation began. Forensics teams combed through the house, piecing together the events that had led to Leo's abandonment and Max's desperate act of courage. In time, the truth emerged. Leo had been born to a mother living in fear, trapped in an abusive relationship. She had hidden him here, hoping to protect him, but when things spiraled out of control, she had left, too afraid to stay. Max, once a family dog, had remained behind, guarding Leo with every ounce of strength he had. The revelation shook everyone who heard them. Leo's story became a symbol of resilience, of hope amid despair. The community rallied around him, offering support and love. And through it all, Max stayed by his side, refusing to leave even as he healed from his own wounds. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Patel often found herself sitting with Max and Leo. The bond between them was unbreakable, a reminder of the power of loyalty and love. On one particularly quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dr. Patel spoke softly to Max. "You saved him," she said. "You never gave up." Max's tail thumped once, a slow, deliberate motion that seemed to say, "I'd do it again." Leo would grow up surrounded by people who loved him, who would tell him stories of the dog who carried him to safety. And though he might not remember the harrowing journey that brought him here, the scar on his forehead would always remind him of the day a brave dog named Max changed his life forever. And so, the story of Leo and Max spread far and wide, a tale of sacrifice, love, and the enduring bond between a child and his unlikely savior. It touched hearts, inspiring many to believe in the strength of love even in the darkest of times.